Facts be damned.
Is that like that? There's talk that CNN wants to reform itself and be kind of like the old CNN.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you think about it, well, like when September 11th happened, most people went to CNN.
Yes.
Even the conservatives, they weren't going to Fox,
Sure.
they're going to CNN. That was just viewed as the place to get news. That obviously has changed. They say they want to go back, but I think it may go to a point you made. You have to, what do you do with all the people there? They all have an agenda, all the employees. And so I think they've tried, and I don't think it's been successful at all.
And the ones that don't have an agenda, didn't come with an agenda, recalibrated during the Trump administration to have an agenda. Because that, I mean, look at Rachel Maddow's show. It was the #1 show on cable. It did enormous numbers about things that didn't exist. Did Michael Cohen go to Prague? Go back and look up those videos. And she's, fire breathing about this, and people love it. It is red meat for one ideology. Turns out not to be true. Do you think they revisited? Of course not. Now they're trying to think of what the business model is in the future. And, maybe there's other people to attack.
Well, I think the swan song has been this Russia collusion hoax, because they indulged in that for 2 years. And it was almost all based on anonymous sources. I mean, it all eventually was debunked. And even in real time, people were saying this, but they just kept cycling in this. And I think it just raises the question, this obsession with these anonymous sources, where did that come from? It used to be rare that you would do it. I mean, to assassinate someone's character with anonymous sources would have been a total no-no. Now it's just kind of like a normal, and actually the preferred method of being able to deliver content.
I mean, well, I probably won't remember this because it didn't get a lot of coverage. There was a leaked audio tape of Dean Baquet, the editor-in-chief of the New York Times, talking to his staff. And at one point, kind of unnoticed by people, he said, "We built our newsroom around this story, Russia collusion. And I think we did a pretty good job." Forget about that, because you can judge that I don't think they did a pretty good job. But we built our newsroom around this story. And when you're building a newsroom around a story that is so tissue thin, you're relying on the Steele dossier, which is relying on anonymous sources, which is itself probably misinformation, right? Where is that stuff coming from? Who are the people that are providing Christopher Steele, the ex-MI6 guy that put it together, with this information? That could be misinformation from the FSB or something,
And there's zero consequence for relying on non-credible and anonymous sources. How do you check that power? It's impossible. We've been talking about the New York Times versus Sullivan standard. That standard requires a defamation plaintiff to show that the journalist knew subjectively, not what a reasonable person knew, but subjectively knew at the time of publication what they were writing was false. Yet they're relying on anonymous sources. You don't know who they're relying on, and you cannot put into a complaint factual allegations to support overcoming this malice standard for New York Times versus Sullivan, where there's anonymous sources. There's no way to challenge it. And, I think that there should be some consideration for legislation that changes the standards, a presumption of, that your source is not credible if you're relying on an anonymous source. Or, there are a lot of different things you can do, but it is increasingly used, and it's, you see it time and time again where the reason that they're allowing someone to rely on anonymous sources for fear of their own reputation or fear of their own, professional reputation. Meanwhile, they're using it to take down somebody else's.